This program is recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM.
Actual power supply attached, so we're looking at three 20 amp outlets that power the entire bridge, and that's all 304 fixtures and the 12 pier fixtures that are in the current design. So thinking that it's three 20 amp 240 volt outlets that are physically powering this, that's much smaller than what you're going to find even in your home powering your living room and 2 bedrooms, if you think of it in that capacity. And so we've put on this drawing for you sort of the types of fixtures, the cut sheets that we're actually recommending that we'll use. This first fixture, the color burst, is actually what I'm holding in my hand. It's just, this is the entertainment version, whereas the architectural version has a power supply on the back, but it's not any bigger than this. And we can actually patina paint it so it matches the rest of the bridge, and that's the current intent. So as these are off the side, they're patinaed brown, so you actually don't get the sense that there's sort of tumors or moles attached to the top of it. We're trying to protect the historic nature of that 1903 bridge as much as possible. Looking at sort of what we're lighting the piers with, we need a larger wash fixture, and so this will get tucked up underneath where the main beams, there's 2-foot beams that run underneath that. We're going to tuck 2 of these on either side of each pier, sort of one span back, and it basically washes that pier. You won't actually see the fixture. You won't see the light source. It'll just be reflecting off of the piers themselves. And so as we move down, you're going to get to see this turned PDF, which we have blown up, that shows where all the fixtures are, and I'm happy to bring it around as we have questions, because I'm sure you will. And here are some renderings of what this bridge actually looks like lit, and I apologize for the resolution. I just took photos off the rendering software with my phone, because it was easier than exporting the BMPs, which were really large files. So here's sort of the bridge in red with a teal pier separation. Here it is in green with blue purplish piers. We have the ability to do what does normal daylight pollution of the night sky that you already have in Eau Claire look like. So this is running a rendering engine of, you actually have, if it's a fully cloudy night, you have daylight pollution that already exists in the city. So what does that look like in atmosphere around the bridge? So that's why it's less defined than in the black background photos. And then, what does it look like in teal with pink bases? And what does it look like if we just light the verticals only, right? To give you a sense that we have control from the top and bottom of the verticals, as well as the ability of each horizontal junction. So if you think of a gradated waterfall of color that can move both horizontally and vertically, that's the type of control we're looking at on the bridge, and that's on both sides of the bridge currently within the design. And so now I'll open it up for all your questions, which I'm sure you have.
Yeah, I got some emails on this, and I think that you've kind of answered those already, and their real concern was light pollution. What impact does this have on the thing from that standpoint, and could you address that a little bit?
Bob, I absolutely can. I'm a huge supporter of the Dark Sky Initiative. I do not want to see us adding pollution to the night sky. So the fixtures that are at the bottom of the bridge aiming upwards, if you think of this bolted to the edge of the beam, it's physically tilted back, and its job is to wash this vertical not be of halfway up the vertical. So we're not pointing daylight or LED light into the night sky. It's washing that architectural beam, and it's a very narrow beam. It's 14 degrees. So it goes up that vertical, and it ends halfway up, much like the one above it coming down that vertical comes down the beam and ends halfway. And in the middle is where that color mix happens between the top and the bottom color light. So our intent is that these will not wash beyond that. And we're also putting what's called an eyelash. So it actually is almost like a top hat, a piece of stovepipe that actually shields the light source from the viewer. So guests who are walking across the bridge or viewing it from Phoenix Park, they don't actually see all these little light sources along the bridge. They're actually eyelashed in a capacity so that you don't see that. So we've done every effort that we can to ensure that we're both not polluting the night sky or providing direct light sources at residents, cars, passing vehicles, or residential homes.
Okay. We have, like, when we do ball diamonds that are next to streets and that, they have to set the lights so that there's no bleeding over onto the streets and et cetera, and so you're answering that won't happen. The next question, this isn't so much for you as I guess, so before it comes to the council, I think it would be a good idea if this was presented to the apartment complex down there, just so to find out if they have any concerns or not concerns, and you may have done that already.
Yes, we've talked to the apartment managers about this, and they're supportive of the project. We have an email out right now, and we've just initially gotten positive responses back, as well as we're talking with the neighborhood groups, the North Riverfront's neighborhood, the historic Randall Park neighborhood. We've heard very positive remarks back from that group. She said they've only been positive. I do have a couple of letters, one from the Phoenix Park Merchants Association. That group that's in the Phoenix Park area is supportive of the idea, and so we're working to get those, but we've only heard positive things back, and we do have letters currently.
Okay, and then the other one, of course, is obviously the ongoing cost. I know they said they'd have the initial cost covered. Who's going to pay for the annual lighting of it, the electrical cost, and who's going to pay for the maintenance?
So we actually have a 7-page document with the City of Eau Claire. It says Memorandum of Understanding for Phoenix Park Bridge Lighting. It is between downtown Eau Claire, the Rotary Club of Eau Claire, and the City of Eau Claire. So we have those things covered. The Rotary will take care of the maintenance. We'll have an ongoing fund that hopefully will have donations in there all of the time to provide for the maintenance.
And that agreement is now presented to the Waterways. That agreement will go to City Council. Waterways is being asked to comment on the actual project itself.
But all those things have been addressed, and we have a plan in place for that. Joshua.
Thank you.
In the document provided, it's talking about light shows, and it says light shows not to exceed 5 minutes and at 30-minute intervals. So would that just be a moving light show, and then the bridge would be stationary illuminated? Otherwise, is that how that would work?
Correct.
The difference between the two, okay.
Right.
So, for instance, yes, it may be, like, for instance, in December, it could be red and green starting at 4:30 and just a slow transition. And then maybe at 6 o'clock, we know if somebody comes out of the livery for dinner and they know at 6 o'clock we're going to have a light show, so maybe every half hour there will be something different happening for a 5-minute time period every half hour, for instance. So that's possible.
Who will be controlling and setting up the lighting sequences? As a Luddite, it kind of enjoys the old, or metal and concrete structure that we have there. I understand the value of lighting it and how many people will be attracted to it, but I also worry a little bit that it becomes a show as opposed to just the nuance of the bridge itself. And so, who would be able to program and control that aspect of the process?
So currently, the city will control the actual access computer and provide that access to whoever they deem has the programming ability. Currently, the intent would be that the campus would be the programmers of that under the guidance of both the city and DECI and the Rotary of what they want to see achieved. And it would either be students or myself that are doing that physical programming and executing it, but the city ultimately controls the gateway of access to by which we program. You're welcome.
David.
So I'm a Phoenix Park urbanite, and what I love about the holiday lights on the trees is how simple and elegant they are, right? They're kind of plain, silvery white light, and that's been very attractive, I think, to lots of people. So I guess this project, the question that comes for me is, like, how many shows, for what duration, for how many months, and will there be any time when the bridge is lit simply, right? That's sort of maybe the nuance, right? The sort of the historic quality of the bridge is the centerpiece, not the wild lights.
So I think the standard state, not to use this as your reference point, would be more of a simple look like the top of the bridge in which we're enhancing its architectural element at night.
Right.
And that's all that's happening. So it's just a reinforcement of the bridge itself. And at specific moments that the city deems necessary, we present something that's an economic driver by creating a show that we apply. I don't believe the current intent is that we're running shows all the time, that it is more of a planned sequential item.
What would the default lighting look like? I mean, the lighting that's there most of the time when there aren't shows.
because these are RGB fixtures, the goal is that really it's lit in a natural white light environment, right? So we're essentially relighting what daylight does to the bridge, but it enhances that in the evening time. Does that help, Dave?
Maybe I misunderstood. So
Yeah.
most of the time it's white lights,
Correct.
natural light.
And for the shows, the 5-minute shows, we may say Fridays and Saturdays from this time until this time. So every other day of the week, it won't have those shows. And we would have to go through a special events application if we were going to have more than that, some light competition or something like that. So those are things that we can add with a special events application.
And I understand how that would bring people, for sure.
Jason?
Do you have any intention of considering new places to view the bridge from the banks of the river, like new benches or seating?
I guess that really isn't the scope of our we hope we bring enough people down that that's an issue, but at this point, no, it's really not part of the scope of our project.
I do think one concept is that as we look at the plaza surrounding sort of the confluence, that is going to be a direct view to the bridge, at least the south side of the bridge, and that will hopefully be a driver that drives people both to that sort of northwest riverbank of, go explore that district, and as people are in that district looking back at Confluence and Phoenix Park, wanting that it becomes that connector to the two sides of the Chippewa River would be our hope.
And part of the thought too is if we the idea is to have the shows, be on part of the weekends and be at set times, so people who are maybe coming out of a show at the Confluence at 9:38 say, oh, geez, there's going to be a light show at 10 o'clock. We're going to stay here and wait for the show at 10 o'clock, have the show occur, and then actually at this point anyway, the last show can be at 10 o'clock. So maybe you have it a little bit later, but at this point, that's what the agreement states. So.
Joshua, did you have something else?
I did not.
Okay. Are there any other questions for this team? Rick?
I want to comment that probably more important than the lighting of the bridge and the process of illuminating it is the collaboration between the different groups within Eau Claire to bring this to the forefront. Seeing the university re-engage as not just the university, but as a source of entertainment and resources for the community is really important, and to find it tied to a local group, and then working with downtown. Again, the lighting is almost secondary to the impact that it shows we can accomplish in this community when we work together.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other members from the public that want to speak on this item? Would you please state your name and address?
My name's Marcia Brandner. I live at 629 Menominee Street. I am part of the Historic Randall Park Steering Committee, although I don't speak for them. But there have been a few of us who have concerns about the lighting. As I said, I live on the river. I see the bike trail and the bridges. I'm going to cry because that's what I do. As people don't just use them to get exercise or whatever, they use them to be in nature. And I see the neon lights as, oh my God, how gaudy. I can appreciate lighting the bridge. Having white lights would be okay. And especially as a historical bridge. But I definitely don't like all the colors. When God makes colors, it's okay. Aurora Borealis, rainbows. But man can't top that. And if the last 2 weeks on television, they've had programs about the national parks. And if you listen to John Muir, he'll tell you people need to just be in nature. And I just think that all those lights is not good. And as the gentleman said, going to Phoenix Park and seeing the simplicity of the lighting, I just would rather have it very simple, just plain white. if they're going to light it. And that's all.
Thank you, Ms. Gray. Anyone else from the public? Okay, is there any discussion amongst commission members on this topic? Mr. Klinkhammer.
Thank you. I've had the pleasure recently of visiting Budapest, and I'm sure many other people have as well, and other cities that have taken the opportunity to illuminate bridges in their city. But that was probably the most dramatic community that I've ever been in that used lighting on their bridges across the river connecting Buda from Pest. And I'm not beginning to compare Eau Claire to Budapest, but I think for the few hours of dark that we're talking about using this type of lighting, I think it's exciting. I think it generates an atmosphere in downtown that is unique. And this bridge lighting is a mechanism to reinforce how exciting downtown is becoming. And I think it's a good idea. And I agree with Rick. I think that it's also speaks well of the initiative that's occurring within our community is collaboration between the various entities, the city and the university and private donors. So I think there's a lot of positive things about this.
Okay, anyone else? Susan?
There. Selena made reference to the Good Life study, which is a few years ago, and I'm just full disclosure, I spent quite a long time working on that project and the follow-up discussions about how important the rivers and experiences with the rivers are to people's sense of identity of Eau Claire. And this to me is like a logical extension. I believe that the default, I believe this is how you explain, but maybe I can just verify. You're looking here at the example of the lit with color, but that's not the default, right? The default is the simpler, and it's not that bridges would be lit all the time. It is a special thing. I think the opportunity to do something that would be yet another thing that helps reinforce your people that they live in a unique place and they have an opportunity to experience it in different ways. I think that's a great plus and very consistent with all the discussions that have gone along from the time of that study through the follow-up activities that people have done, coming up with ideas about how to execute the ideas of that study. So that's why I think it's such an interest, and because you have control over it, it doesn't have to be garish, or it can be garish for a limited amount of time. It's like it's very much under control. I think these are all positives.
Okay, thank you. Jason.
I'd just like to say that I appreciate your desire for natural and harmonious, and I value that as well. But I would imagine that having the bridge lit may attract more people than otherwise might just come there on their own, and they would have an opportunity to stand by the river quietly, listening to the water, watching the bridge, and that would be a powerful experience to them in some way too.
Joshua?
with the redevelopment going downtown, and ostensibly this is the most urban place in the city of Eau Claire, is down here at the confluence of the two rivers, and with the confluence project in the Cannery District that will be developing, and the hotels and restaurants, I think this is going to be a nice little jewel of an attraction to have downtown as a focal point for all the new developments going on downtown. And as we said before, the city controlling the computer, I think we can be assured that nothing too crazy will be going on with the lights, and I think it'll just be a nice little pinnacle of natural outdoor colorful entertainment to backdrop everything going on. So I think this is a pretty innovative and exciting proposal.
Okay, anyone else? Seems like we might be ready for a motion then. Can we get a motion and a second to approve?
Move to approve.
And Joshua, David. Mr. Klinkhammer seconds that. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That's good. Thank you again. The next item on the agenda is the proposed accessible Miracle League baseball field construction at Jeffers Road Park.
As you may or may not be aware, the city has received a request and has been working with a local group of baseball enthusiasts. And they're interested in expanding a field within the city of Eau Claire. And they came to us, invited us to some meetings, and asked if we could help with providing some property so that they could build a baseball field. But this is not your typical baseball field that you'd find at Fairfax or at Carson Park, because there's a very special group of users that would use a field like this. This is a field that is specially built and designed to accommodate children and young adults who are wheelchair bound or have other mobility issues. And it is an opportunity to provide them with a baseball experience. The difference between the field and a normal field really only is in the surface. The actual surface is a poured in place or artificial turf, a hard surface, surface that you might find in an indoor field house, for example, at McPhee or at UW Stout. It's a hard rubberized surface. It is painted and looks just like a baseball field, but it's very easy for kids that have mobility issues to roll, to actually experience hitting a ball and running to first base or running to second base or to hit a ball over a fence. It's a very small field. And there are other miracle fields in the country. There are fields in the La Crosse area, specifically I believe it's in Onalaska. There also have fields in Manitowoc and in Appleton, and they're wildly successful. They have a tendency to draw people from all over. One of the first meetings that I went to, I was surprised to learn the number of people from Eau Claire who have children who are wheelchair bound, who drive to Onalaska once a week so that their kid can play a 1 hour baseball game just to experience baseball. Now you've got to really love the game, and you've really got to love your kids to drive them an hour and a half, 2 hours to play a 50 or 55 minute baseball game and then truck them back home. But this is a wonderful opportunity for Eau Claire, and the group has been talking with us over the past probably 6 months, and we are recommending that a miracle field be installed at Jeffers Road Park. As you're aware, we have 5 fields that will be coming online if it ever quits raining and snowing around here, maybe even in the next couple weeks. So we're very excited about having this gear up. What's nice about placing this miracle field at this location is that this is where all the other kids are going to play baseball and softball too. This isn't a field that we could have put at Ferry Street or at Zephyr Hill or maybe next to the horseshoe courts at Carson Park. But this is in the middle of where a lot of kids come to play baseball and softball. And we're hoping that locating a field in this complex gives not only the kids who are playing here a chance to play ball, but a chance to see who's playing down here. and also for these kids to see who's playing up here, because they are their classmates, their relatives, their friends, their neighbors. So this is a great experience, a great opportunity for the city of Eau Claire to participate in a program like this. I'll give you a little. I think the graphics here are pretty good, but obviously we have the parking lot is in. We have the main pathway to the complex. Not a lot of these pathways and pads have been poured yet. It's still pretty rough out there. The main thing that's going on out here is the fields are playable. The dugouts are not completed yet. We don't have a pathway around the entire park yet. We don't have a formal entryway. Right now we're using a temporary entrance that comes in right here past the lift station and accesses. Down the road we wanted to install a permanent road up here. The Gateway has talked about, rather than industrial development up here, perhaps developing some kind of multifamily housing up in here. So they would help us build this road that would access that multifamily housing and the park. Specifically, that field would look like that. Here's one of the fields off to the left. Here's the current road that comes in. We put in handicap parking spots alongside here. There'd be a plaza, very similar to the Hank Aaron Plaza out in front of the baseball field, a place for people to meet before they go into a ball game or to meet after a game, and where to get picked up, that kind of thing. So there would be this socialization area in here. As you can imagine, getting children that are handicap bound, getting them to facilities and ready to play ball, and then getting them loaded back on can take some time. So this staging area is very important. And then here's the actual field itself. And again, it's very, very small compared to, here's just a fraction of a 225-foot softball field. This is more like 140 or 150 feet down the line. So it's a pretty small facility. This is what it would look like from Jeffers Road looking back into the park. And I love the 40 to 60-year-old trees in here. It's pretty cool. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be around to see that, but so this is really a cool rendering. So you can see the other fields over here, and one day it's going to be a really cool. There would be a retaining wall out here because of some of the slopes. If you can picture what that looks like, there's a little bit of a slope, so there would need to be a retaining wall out here. This indicates the wording on this sign here is bigger than what would be allowed by code. The group is aware that this would need to be scaled down to, I believe, 50 square feet. I think Pat, the sign guy, has they're willing and they understand that they would need to shrink that a little bit. Here's their timetable. They're looking at raising funds. This will cost about $525,000 to build. Their goal is to raise the funds and then to have Myron Construction out of Appleton, which recently opened an office here in Eau Claire. They would actually construct the field and then turn it over to the city. They constructed the field in Appleton. We'd be all for that, having a construction company that specifically builds these fields, knows what works and doesn't work, come in and build it. And they are prepared to raise the money. I know that Goodwill Industries of Wisconsin has made a substantial contribution to this project already. The goal would be to construct the field starting this fall and having it open and playable. Looks like here about a year from now. So it's a very ambitious timeline, but certainly doable. Well, I wouldn't, but you could. If you, as long as you had your long underwear and we got the snow off the field. But in all seriousness, this is a field that would be ready very early in the year because you could remove snow. And I think some of the baseball and softball players that normally play on the grass fields would be able to at least have like infield practice and do some smaller things when the weather gets, when at least the sun's shining. But the answer to your question is, yeah, you could. So it's not dissimilar to playing on artificial turf. It expands your season a little bit. So in the packet, you saw the letter of request that we received from them, and we have reached an agreement about the process and about how the fields would operate and how everything would be coordinated between the city and the Little League and the girls softball and all the other special events that will eventually occur up there, how that will all work out. So we're very confident that we have a good agreement here. They're ready to start with fundraising. So we're coming to Waterways obviously tonight and then to City Council at the May 10th meeting, and then they hope to kick off their formal campaign. Nick White, who is one of the organizers of the group, is here and can answer any questions that you have. But one of the things that I know the league will be looking for coaches, because each player needs to have a coach to help them, which I think is a great opportunity for anyone who enjoys working with children that have mobility issues. Any questions for either myself or the applicant?
Rick?
First of all, I want to compliment the City of Eau Claire and the groups involved in setting this forward. For the last 18, 19 years, I've worked with people with disabilities for a variety of ages, and I've seen the joy in a parent's eyes when these kids are allowed to participate in what we would call normal everyday activities, and I can't think of a better thing to bring forward to the community than this. So, the only question I have is we're going to have to make sure we have some handicapped accessible bathrooms.
Yes, and that is
actually a serious concern, is that we have to be able to provide facilities to support the people beyond just running to first base.
Right. So the answer to that is that there'll be an accessible restroom down here, but also the restrooms in here are accessible. One of the things that we want to do as soon as possible is pour this connector in here, and that'll help. Obviously, we want connecting trails at all these spots eventually down the road, but the priority will be to connect this, and that's a priority for the Little League and the girls softball also, because out in this area is where some playground equipment will be installed. So that is a very high priority.
Jason?
At the last meeting, it was expressed that the group had decided not to pursue the Jeffers Road site, but I guess that's changed.
That's correct. That's correct.
Karen?
Yeah, just a real quick technical question. You mentioned the road that's going in right now to the parking lot.
Yes.
It looks like that will remain permanently, or?
Well, we have a couple options, and we'll look at that. But we've talked about the possibility when that road goes into the north that this, for example, could become a bulb, and this gets discontinued. That's one option. Another option is to continue with this road and actually narrow it down or put some kind of bollards or something in there. But as of right now, I think we're going to need handicapped spaces up here. So I think it's going to be advantageous to allow people to park here and to allow people to come in off of Jeffers Road and park. So we may just end up leaving that road in.
Yeah.
But we do have some options. Once this road gets in here, then we do have some options.
Joshua?
Phil, if you could bring up that little insert diagram again, please.
This one?
Yeah, I mean, the main parking is pretty far from where this is going to be. I'm not sure how many players are on a team. Just quick counting, this looks like there's 14 spots there. I don't know if 9 play on each side. That'd be like 18 players. Yeah. I just want to make sure perhaps enough handicap parking for each of the possible players could be nearby, as opposed to having to go all the way from the other parking lot.
And you know, in hindsight, I wish we'd have known that this was coming back when we designed this, but we didn't. I mean, that's the way it is. But I don't think that's too far. I think what'll happen here is we'll see people dropping off children and picking up children here, and then going to the main parking lot to park for the duration of the game. I think that's the more likely scenario.
And part of the intent, sorry, Phil, was these 2 spaces here would be for a drop-off zone. Yeah. So individuals would drop their children off and then go park up in the general parking area.
Okay, yeah, I see a lot of, a lot of traffic just for trying to.
And the other thing that we've recently learned is that the time in between games, it's not like hockey at Hobbs where there's a game ends, the ice gets resurfaced, and there's another group on there right now. There's going to be built-in breaks in between here, so that will help reduce some of the pressure for these loading and for these parking spots.
Yes, as Phil mentioned, games are about 55 minutes, but they're scheduled for an hour and a half. So there is that transition time between the games.
This is Nick White, in case.
Are there any other questions? Go on.
Thank you. Talked about youth, which is obviously an important part of our population, but I'm sure there are a great number of people my age or almost that old. Is this facility going to be available to them as well?
Yes.
If they organize?
Yes. And the miracle season is typically June, July, and August. So there are going to be fringe periods, and there are also going to be days and weekends. This is predominantly going to be used during the week on weekdays, weekday evenings. So it is going to be available. We're just going to have to wait and see. I'm sure Ron will be there ready to play pickleball, but I could see people wanting to play baseball and softball here, or kickball, or some other activities like that, or even, as we mentioned before, about girls softball and boys baseball. Maybe at least they're not going to be able to have a full-scale practice here because the field is pretty small, but they can do some modified drills. So there's some great opportunities with a facility like this.
Mr. White.
On that note, David, some of you are familiar with Aurora and REACH programs for individuals with disabilities. Those individuals are on our steering committee and have expressed interest about participating. Several of the schools in the area have expressed interest in the spring and fall about their special education programs participating and using the field as well. So there will be other groups be able to use the field throughout the year besides the Miracle League program.
Allison?
The $525,000 for the fundraising, does that include building a restroom facility?
Yes.
And then how about maintenance of, so once it's built and then maintaining the?
So there is a $25,000 maintenance fund of that $525,000 for ongoing maintenance. The field itself, the surface is about a 12 to 15 year surface. So we're setting aside $25,000 for future maintenance of the field.
And that's going to be predominantly replacing the carpet, the hard surface, the poured-in-place surface in here. But in terms of picking up garbage, it'll be our regular crew that picks up garbage and mows the perimeter area. We'll also be over in the playground area picking up there. The city will be responsible for seal coating the roads and parking lots. But the trade-off is that other groups other than the Miracle League will be able to use that. And I'm sure there will be fees associated with the rental of this facility that will be used to offset those costs for longer-term maintenance, for cleaning, that kind of thing.
Anyone else?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak to this? No? Is there any other discussion from the commission members on this? Karen?
I'll just say, I think whatever just said, I'm amazed constantly the new ideas that people come up with of ways of welcoming people to our city, just from every single aspect. And this is a whole nother one, sports and, people with mobility issues, just a fantastic project. And I think, again, something that's going to become such a regional draw for us, and again, just welcoming people to the city, and I think that's a fantastic thing.
Yes. Anyone else? Can we get a motion?
I'll move.
And a second?
I'll second.
Ron is seconding. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Next item on the agenda is the Forestry Division update and Arbor Day recognition. Mr. Koala.
Good evening, everybody. At last night's council meeting, we were the City Forestry Division was honored with a proclamation recognizing the 36th year that the City of Eau Claire has achieved the Tree City USA designation. And I was able to introduce the Forestry Division staff, what I mentioned last night was the fact that the successes of this work group is really the foot soldiers that were behind me last night are the ones that have really been able to be participate in this, and the workers are the real reason that we get this all done. But as well as the policymakers, the city council, you folks yourselves, on your dedication to making Eau Claire a sustainable community, and your passion, if you will, and for the city's green infrastructure. And that's a true honor for me to serve in this capacity to manage that urban forestry canopy. And I've been doing this, I've been here for 12 years, and I'll stay for some more as long as you'll have me. And I just wanted to stress that it's a true honor to be steward of this green infrastructure. And to have that value recognized for 36 years, it's really, really impressive. And I'll be able to, for some of you folks that are new or newer to the board or the commission, to achieve the Tree City USA status, there's some criteria we need to meet. It is to have a board such as yourself to deal with the tree issue, urban forestry issues, and specifically a proclamation like we had last night, and then an event as well. And later this spring, we'll be planting trees in honor of individuals and businesses that receive sustainability awards from the Sustainability Committee. And so we'll be planting trees throughout the city this spring. I do believe approximately 60 trees will be planted in honor of those individuals and businesses and associations that received the awards. And finally, as a municipality, we need to spend $2 per capita on our forestry department. So we've met that criteria 36 years in a row, which is it's really special. We are only second only to the city of Sheboygan, Wisconsin, in a number of years as Tree City USA. A couple things that I'd just like to touch or mention as well is I'm currently I'm a member of the State Urban Forestry Council. I have been for the past 4 years, and the Urban Forestry Council gives out some awards every year, and one of the awards category that the council had given out last year was the Innovations in Urban Forestry Award. And that was given to the Wisconsin Urban Wood Organization, and we had some representatives of that organization here last night. And we mentioned collaboration last night, and again I hear that tonight, and I was very impressed. The culmination of where we're at now with our wood utilization came from an idea that Cindy Casey, our former state urban forestry coordinator, she's now retired, had, and her and I met, and we pitched this idea to the 2015 Leadership Eau Claire class, and trying to create an urban wood marketplace. The raw materials that we come across, trees are removed for various reasons: dead, diseased, construction projects, emerald ash borer, and other circumstances. And we're seeing a lot of trees go through a chipper, and it just doesn't seem all that fitting. And we met with the Leadership Eau Claire class. We pitched the idea. They grabbed this idea. This work group grabbed this idea and ran with it. And again, and then met up with the folks from Wisconsin Urban Wood. And collectively, it was last summer, an agreement was reached between the City of Eau Claire and the Wisconsin Urban Wood Organization. Whereas if someone's a member of that organization, they have access to our raw materials or logs, if you will, and for the purpose of upcycling, trees and parts of trees for everything from furniture to artwork and architectural pieces, you name it. And on this, as last week, there was a some of the ash trees that have come down in advance of the emerald ash borer. Our conference tables that were recently installed in the North Conference Room were made out of urban ash trees that come right out of our community. So they're going to, their ability to stay in their life cycle is much prolonged due to that fact. So that was, and the award that's behind me is the award itself. It's even the plaque is made from urban wood out of Wisconsin as well, and that'll be on display for a good number of weeks here out front of the council chambers. One of our bigger initiatives that the Forestry Division always is busy with is pruning, trimming, and tree maintenance. Our crews are typically, in certain neighborhoods, we're seeing trees that look similar to this, and eventually, as they begin to, thin these crowns, it not only serves, it creates a safer environment, a safer canopy. It allows, wind to roll through trees. Here's a better after. We try to prune on a 7-year pruning cycle. It's not always that easy to achieve, but when we're through with a tree that might have previously looked something like this, you can imagine this tree with full foliage would be like a ship's sail. There's a lot of torque when there's heavy winds and thunderstorms. This is more of what the end product looks like, and this really goes a long way as far as alleviating, storm damage and trees, limbs tearing out of a tree. In addition to that, we try to avoid cuts like this. This is what happens when pruning, we have difficulty meeting our pruning cycles. We're making bigger cuts than we care to, but however, we would rather make this cut as arborists than garbage trucks, snow plows, and the like. That gets to be real expensive. So we try to, and you can see this street was an aftershot too. The trees still are fully intact. They're a better representation of what their species is, and there's, if this happened to, this is a postal service truck, but if it happened to be a garbage truck, you can see that there's plenty of clearance here. So planting, our planting budget, when I go to conferences and workshops, I can tell you that a lot of my colleagues are extremely jealous of Eau Claire's abundant and robust planting budget. We do a very good job of planting trees. We plant approximately, on average, over 500 trees annually every year on our street projects, and then with the anticipated advancement of the emerald ash borer, we've been able to bolster that planting budget considerably, and we've been really aggressive with our replanting too. This is the latest map of the locations where emerald ash borer has been located. Most, I don't think that shows up, but this is 2000. This was 2 weeks ago in Wood County and Portage County, and it's 6 months ago that it wasn't here, but it's been discovered recently. And obviously, there's finds in the metro area, and obviously since 2002, the UP has been dealing with the emerald ash borer, and here we are. Black River Falls was just last year in Jackson County. I've been here for a number of years, and I know I say it every year, it's not a matter of if, it's when, but the things that we're doing, I think, are positioning our community very well to be prepared. We have a community response plan to emerald ash borer that we've been working off of since 2011. We have an adequate marshaling yard for this biomass that'll be coming out of the community, and an operational agreement with a contractor to operate our Jeffers Road brush site. So we're, what's going to have to come out is going to have to, down is going to have to be processed and moved along, and with the folks from Wisconsin Urban Wood, if they're taking logs off of that pile, that's a lot of cost we're avoiding by not having to run this material through a wood chipper as well. I went kind of fast, but if you have any questions about the Forestry Division's activities, initiatives, I'd be happy to entertain and answer.
Do you have any goals for the Forestry Division that you haven't discussed so far?
I'm sorry, Jason, what was it?
Any goals for the Forestry Division that you haven't mentioned already?
Our goals for the forestry division would be to follow through with our 10-year urban forestry management plan, and we are hitting those goals. The one goal or one objective that is really difficult is maintaining that tight pruning cycle. So we had to make some concessions. In a perfect world, we'd be visiting a tree every 7 years. We've looked at it by diameter inch or age of tree. We're giving more attention to the younger trees. Studies show that if you can prune a tree or touch a tree maintenance-wise, 3 times in the first 10 years of its life, you pretty much don't have to maintain or any work on that tree for the next 25 years. So that saves a lot of time and dollars. And I'll tell you, it's a lot more costly or a lot cheaper to prune a tree from the ground with a Felco and a pruning shears in your hand as opposed to from a 40-foot high bucket, or climbing in the tree for that matter. So, but that pruning cycle is a real challenge, but we are focusing our more attention on the younger trees, looking at the older trees, the bigger diameter trees, more of a safety pruning or sanitation pruning as opposed to a complete, top to bottom type work. Because if we were to do that simply with our ratio of 32,000 trees to 5 arborists, it would be, if we climbed every tree, we never get caught up. Oh, thank you, Phil. And at the yard across the street from our office at 910 Forest Street, we've recently installed a pea gravel bed for us to establish bare root trees. Now we plant, primarily our stock is bald and burlap, but we can purchase bare root trees quite a bit cheaper, but it's a timely event. You need to get them in the ground very, very fast, and we don't often have that ability. But with this pea gravel bed, we can heal the trees in, so to speak, and then we'll be able to plant them on our terms rather than finding a cold storage or something like that. In addition to that, we'll always have inventory. Our goal is to always have an inventory of trees on hand for the occasional car versus tree accident where a tree gets wiped out and we're not able to plant until that next spring or fall season. So tree comes down or tree comes out for whatever, we can put one back very quickly. And that's a new initiative that we are excited about as well. And we'll, on average, that bare root tree is well over $100 cheaper than the bald and burlap tree.
Rick?
2 comments. One is years ago I did some research on the pea gravel beds, and it's a very effective way to store a tree until it's needed. So the other question is kind of one of those off-the-wall things. Is over the years, areas that had been infected with Dutch elm disease, they would find naturally resistant elms, and tissue was collected and used to propagate the more disease-resistant varieties we see today. Has any effort been done with the ash? Because I know that most of the communities are cutting in anticipation as opposed to waiting for things to go through and say, oh, that tree made it. But is there any research going on is there any natural resistance with our native ash?
Yeah, the interesting thing about the ash tree is, and the industry's been collecting seeds for some time now. It took about 35, closer to 40 years to develop a disease-resistant or tolerant strain of the elm tree that was resistant to Dutch elm disease. The industry has that roadmap to follow, and the industry and governments have been collecting seeds sources from all over the United States and Europe to eventually have a seed bank to work on a strain that is resistant or doesn't succumb to the emerald ash borer. The interesting thing is the emerald ash borer originates from parts of Asia, Korea primarily. The emerald ash borer has been in existence from time immemorial, and so have native ash trees in that region. They've coexisted forever. You bring that exotic bug to our native tree, they can't coexist. So there's some genetic incompatibility, and my guess is it won't take 40 years to find that, to develop that hybrid. I'm really confident that we'll get there sooner than 40 years. It's exciting. to know that that's happening. And in addition to that, what we need to learn, or what we have to, the lesson learned is we cannot plant monocultures. It's an educational process too, and our forestry, our arborists really relish the fact that when a homeowner's at their home and they can go to the door and have a conversation about that, because typically a lot of folks will want, a maple tree, for example, because there's maples up and down this street and up and down that. I want to be like everybody else. Well, the healthy option is to create diversity. And even if the emerald ash borer threat didn't exist, not that we would go out and remove ash trees, but when we see one variety that's stocked so high, our percentage early on was about pretty close to 30% of our community canopy was ash. Considering what a healthy canopy should be, 10 to 12%, we have to bring that down a little way. So even if it's a good thing to do it, what we're doing is it's a diversification program. We wouldn't necessarily have to call it an emerald ash borer response plan. We could call it diversification too. And that's long-term thinking. That's what's going to keep this community's canopy healthy for years to come. There is a blue ash that has shown some resistance, but we cannot get our hands on those. But I've heard that there's the blue ash genus is showing some resistance to the emerald ash borer, and actually the land that it's on has been bought by one of the larger nurseries in the state, and they are, I think they might even have it guarded with armed guards. I'm not, that's an exaggeration, but the blue ash is showing some fair resistant to it. And blue ash can survive in our region, although we're on the northern edge of it, but it's encouraging.
Any other? Mr. Clinkham.
I'm just full of questions here tonight.
Sure.
I live on the southeast corner of the city near the dog park, and I drive on Prill or AA quite often. And I don't know whether it's the city of Altoona or the county that's out there trimming trees right now, but there are some, it's very frustrating for a woodworker to see these mature pines and hardwoods cut up for firewood out there. Is there a counterpart to your department in the county that can deal with some of this stuff in a more sustainable manner than is happening?
I would like to think Josh Peterson and the Parks and Forest Department would have their ear to the ground on this thing. Recently, the Wisconsin Urban Wood Organization and the city's efforts has gotten some good publicity. And just after last night's meeting and the article in today's paper, we've had 5 calls from folks that are artisans and furniture makers that want to know how to buy in or how to get in on this. And I'm hoping that that can help. There is a gentleman by the name of Pete Clemens from Fall Creek. He's very excited about getting his hands on unique large pieces of whether it's hardwood or pine. I don't think it matters to him. He makes furniture. He's one of the folks that has expressed interest in getting into the city's marshalling yard, and I'm sure if he would hook up with Mr. Peterson and some of their initiatives. I'm curious, Dave, if some of the work you're seeing right now isn't part of transmission line clearance or utility line clearance. I'm not sure.
I can't answer that question. It could very well be.
Yeah, and I'm believing that when you're seeing pruning and if it's pruning per se and removals this time of year, it's typically for utility clearance. The Public Service Commission mandates airspace below those power lines to a certain extent, and their vegetation management is quite different in utility forestry than it is in urban forestry, even, for that matter. And it could be that, and I know those folks like Wright Tree Service and Zealy Tree Service that is a subcontractor for XL Energy, they'd be all too happy to leave logs on site to have somebody come up and take them, because again, it's processing that they wouldn't have to endure.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? We motion to accept, thank you.
I think it's informational, but thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Special events list.
I too would like to thank Todd for the work he does. He does a really nice job with our urban forest among the other 15 jobs that he wears a hat for. So thanks, Todd.
Grandpa too recently.
And new grandpa, yeah. Yeah, that's why he doesn't have any spit up on any of his ties yet. Are there any questions about the special events? Included in your packet is a list of the current applicants. And of course, one of the bigger special events is coming up Sunday, the marathon. And
Marathon?
no questions?
No.
Okay. Any questions on any reports or projects that are listed in the director's report? Any clarification that anyone would like? The herbicide at Half Moon Lake was going to be applied today, but the winds were too high, so it's been rescheduled for Monday. So you'll see a boat with a boom on it injecting endothol on Monday.
Rick.
I feel like a lot of questions tonight. I got to stay ahead of Mr. Klinkhammer here. I see we've gotten a lot of geese back in Bronze Bay. I wonder if there's any long-term plans to try and maintain a manageable flock, or are we? I guess I'm looking for your opinion on the situation.
We have hired John Dunn to do a goose management plan for us. And in addition to that, John is a retired wildlife biologist with the DNR who did our deer management plan for the city a year and a half ago. So John's been hired to do that, to come up with a plan. And essentially, you'll remember that a few years ago we did a goose roundup up at Riverview, and just within the last month we started oiling goose eggs, and that's something that we had John and the Eau Claire County Health Department and Eau Claire County assist with that. It's one of those things that, even for example, Mr. Dunn hadn't done it since he was in college, so it was a learning experience for all of us to figure out how to do it. And the Fish and Wildlife Service in Rhinelander, the people that helped us out with the goose roundup a few years ago, gave us a video and some guidance and the permit to do it. So we spent quite a bit of time in the last 3 weeks. We've actually oiled over 500 goose eggs in Half Moon Lake and in Dells Pond. So while you're not going to see that was 100% effective, you're going to see a significant reduction. What that's going to mean at Half Moon Lake and at Riverview is there's going to be 500 something less pounds of goose feces each day, because one goose is equivalent to 1 pound of feces. So Goose Management Plan is going to recommend.
I don't even want to know how they figured that out.
Okay, I won't go into it, but the bottom line is that the Goose Management Plan is going to recommend that we continue to do the egg oiling. It's going to recommend that we continue to do goose roundup and a combination of some other techniques. We had to change the shoreline. We don't have geese in Phoenix Park because they don't like walking up the rocks. So maybe we need to have more rocks in places. They also do not congregate on manicured lawns where there's a buffer between them and their escape route. Their escape route is the water. So if there's tall grass that they can't see over so that they can see the water, they won't go there. So there are a lot of natural vegetative infrastructure changes that we can make to keep them. So we'll share the Goose Management Plan when it comes forward.
Thanks.
Anything else on the director's report? Do we get a motion to adjourn then? There's nothing else? Who said that? David is making a motion to adjourn. A second?
I'll second.
Joshua seconds. All those in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.